good to go now.
Is that all right? We're good. All right, wait. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the May Georgia ITE monthly webinar. We're very excited to be here today and hear from some of our colleagues halfway across the country. We have a familiar face and an old friend of Georgia ITE, Lance Ballard, here, along with Brian Craig, the consulting engineer for the City of Austin Transportation Department. They'll be presenting on arterial management with the City of Austin. Our meeting today is sponsored by 360 Network Solutions. Before we get to hear from our sponsor and our speaker for today, we have a few announcements I'd like to go through. First is the Georgia IT Leadership Program. The application for the 2021 Leadership Program is now available and can be found on our website. The applications are due by June 11th. So if you have a junior engineer or staff member in your office that you think could benefit from leadership training, please encourage them to apply. The program will be 2 days in November here in Atlanta. But don't feel like you have to be located in Atlanta to apply and attend. We do have the opportunity to provide some support for boarding and travel if you're interested in attending the program from out of the city area. In addition to that, the 2021 Summer Seminar registration is finally open. So we're excited about the conference this year. It's going to be a hybrid format, so there will be in-person and virtual registration options. There is no limit to registration for in-person attendance. We will be limiting the capacity of the rooms, so we may have some additional overflow rooms there. There is, reduced fees for virtual for those that don't feel comfortable to attend or can't make it in person this year. So we have opportunities for anyone that would like to be able to participate this year to get involved. The dates for the conference are July 18th to the 21st. More information can be found on our website, and the conference chair is Bill Lewsom. So if you have any questions, please reach out to him, and his contact information is on the site. With that, that's all we have for that. So I'd like to take the time to introduce Carrie Lord with 360 Network Solutions. They are the monthly sponsor for this month's webinar, and I will turn it over to him to give us a little bit about their company.
Thank you, Chris, and hello, everyone. It's great to be the sponsor for the best section in the world, again and again, every single year. My name is Carrie Lord. I'm the Director of Program Management for 360 Network Solutions. Let me say first that, I've been a member of this Georgia Section ITE since I think about 1993. So for a long time, and it's been the best experience of networking, training, and growth. And I hope that all of you get a feel from that. And it's obvious from the membership and the hard work that everyone does here is why it continues to receive best section. So well-deserved, kudos, looking forward to doing it again every year. At 360 Network Solutions, I want to tell you just a little bit that we're more than just a reseller of great ITS products and innovation and software. Aside from selling those products, our staff are expert, trained, and certified to implement, monitor, maintain, install, you name it, for any of those devices or software. So when we sell you something, we're there to support you from day one, during installation, while you're maintaining and monitoring it throughout your whole time. But I want to tell you a couple of things that you may not know about 360 Network Solutions. We're also into traffic signal and ITS device maintenance and monitoring, something we've been doing for a couple of years now, which has proven to be very worthy to many government agencies. Something we enjoy doing, and we're quite good at it. We have the equipment to do so. We're into network management, monitoring, and maintenance as well. Our team of staff have been growing at the company. I've been here since January, and it's even grown since I've started. In addition, we're pursuing projects that are extending our efforts as far north as Virginia, south into Florida, and even way out in Texas, including something exciting in Austin. So enough about that. Looking forward to hearing from our speakers today. Thank you so much. It's such an honor to be a sponsor. And look forward and hope to get to see you in person at the summer seminar. Bye, everybody.
Thanks, Gary. With that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Meredith Emery to introduce today's speakers.
Hello, everyone. It's good to be back. I'm excited to tell you a little bit about Brian Craig. He is an experienced transportation professional driven to serve the public. He is acknowledged by peers for problem solving and ability to think outside the box and reach consensus among stakeholders. He is always in search of improving workflow and operational efficiency using technology. Brian currently serves as the consulting engineer with the City of Austin Transportation Department, responsible for operating and maintaining the city's traffic signal and ITS network. And the adoption of traffic and ITS technology. Brian is a graduate of Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute and the University of Texas at Austin, and he is registered PE in the state of Texas. Additionally, I would like to welcome back for a brief visit Lance Ballard. He is a transportation engineer at Kinley Horn with experience specializing in traffic signal operations, ITS, and data analytics. Lance currently serves as the manager of the Austin Mobility Management Center, which operates approximately 1,000 signals within the city of Austin. Lance frequently consults on projects nationwide as a practice leader in visualizing transportation data and creating dashboards for state, regional, and local agencies. Prior to his time in Austin, Lance was with us at Georgia ITE for many years and has experience working on our RTOP, RITSO, Super Bowl 53, and many other operations and ITS projects around Georgia. Lance is a graduate of Texas A&M and Georgia Tech, and he is a registered PE in Texas, Georgia, and Alabama. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Brian and Lance to speak on some of Austin's unique things they're doing for their Mobility Management Center.
Thanks, Meredith. I believe y'all should be able to see my screen and hear me. It is good to be speaking with you again, Georgia ITE fam. So yeah, so for the last couple of years, I've been in Austin helping Brian and the city of Austin with their Mobility Management Center, which we'll talk to you about today. So for those of you that don't know me, I'll introduce myself and let Brian introduce himself. I Texas boy originally, but made my way out to Georgia Tech for graduate school, as you heard, and spent the beginning of my career there in Atlanta, and was a very active member of Georgia IT. So it really is a true pleasure to be speaking with y'all again today. I serve as the manager of the Mobility Management Center that manages all the traffic signals and that sort of stuff here, and you'll hear a lot about that today. So I'll let Brian introduce himself, and we'll get on with the show.
Good morning, or I guess good afternoon for most of y'all. As you know, as they said, my name is Brian Craig. I've been working at the city of Austin in 2 stints. After graduating, I went to work for the city for about 2.5 years, in which I primarily did signal timing, and then I left to go into the consulting community for about 5 years. But when the opportunity came up, I went back to work with the city, and I've done almost everything possible within our division, from signal timing, signal design, operational studies. So I tend to get my feet wet in a bunch of different things, and I think in many ways, true to the random title that they give out at the city of Austin, I do fit into the consulting engineer title, and that it seems like, I'm one of the people that everybody goes to for input. With that, I'll give it back to Lance to go over the presentation.
Thanks, yeah. Brian's great to work with. I'm always learning something every time we talk, and keep trying to move the ball forward within Austin Transportation Department, and specifically our Arterial Management Division, which I'll talk about. So we'll give an overview of that, like how is ATD organized, and what all do we do, and what is the Mobility Management Center? How did it come to be? What do we manage? And then talk about some of the things that I think might be interesting to the Georgia IT community, having been a member there for 6-7 years, and then now having been in Austin a couple of years. Wanted to bring some things to the table, that some contrasting things, some things that maybe we do a little differently here in Austin that will be good topics of conversation. And then a few things that you'll recognize and be able to hopefully apply to y'all as well. Phbs, I think, is a big one. We're currently utilizing probe-based signal performance measures, and then we'll talk through our response to pandemic, response to us running out of power in the freezing cold in February, and also some upcoming projects. So Brian will talk to you more about ATD, and we'll keep trucking.
So one of the things that dawned on me a couple of years ago was that, I've become one of those with the institutional knowledge. As such, a lot of times I'm, giving the history of our department and really an overview of how we function. We are a relatively young transportation department at the city. We were formed in 2009 as a department of one. The director was actually the first person hired in our department, and we've grown since then to about 400 people. We are in the Arterial Management Division, which is within the Transportation Department. And, after bouncing around between numerous departments over the years, from Public Works to, planning, back to Public Works, we have our own department. And I think that has given us a much larger voice in the community than what we had when we were simply a division within other departments. It may be overly simplistic, but in many ways, we oversee everything transportation related within the city that isn't related to planes, trains, boats, and the actual pavement and sidewalks. Although we're responsible for what people can do on the pavement and whether or not they can cut into it. Next slide. I'm a little biased, but I do think that our MMC is the centerpiece of our department, both technologically and how we get to affect citizens' lives every day. Just as an overview of our MMC, as you can see, we oversee a sizable number of critical arterials, and those are simply roadways that we've deemed the most essential within the city. I think it makes up approximately 25 arterials out of the many, many more than that. We monitor traffic flow, we make timing adjustments as needed, and we do so remotely from using the GAITE system. Go ahead and go to the next slide, Lance. A little bit of history of our MMC. Although this predates me, there was an election in 1986 in which, from the best that I can tell, was the first bond truly devoted to, I'll say, traffic signals. And as part of that bond, we started deploying communication to our traffic signals. And that was, at the time, copper, as fiber really wasn't an option back then. But from 1986 through the 90s, it was really an expansion in which communication was brought to more of the traffic signals. And as part of that, the city really standardized on the 170 controller platform. And that was really an upgrade from some NEMA cabinets, but also a lot of electromechanical. Communication to those traffic signals was great, but it certainly wasn't what we expect now as far as, CCTV cameras or anything to that effect. And really it was, it all came into a very small office that was, less than 20 by 20. In 1998, the powers to be at the time really had a vision for the future. And, as you can see in the slide, that was fiber, fiber, fiber. By that time, there'd been, innovation within the industry. I think after being stagnant for a long time, there were a lot of new features, new controllers, new softwares, the ability to see field conditions from the office. Next slide. And, from 2000 to 2011, it was really just a progression, getting additional traffic signals online, expanding the capability of our CCTV cameras. But we outgrew the system that we had. You know, even though we're using fiber optic cable, we're using a, you know, SONET-based type communication, not the IP-based communication, which, you know, had become prevalent in, you know, both within the industry, but in IT in general. So in 2011, we put out an RFP and we upgraded to the KITS system. And as part of that, we also revamped our communication network so that we could communicate with all of our traffic signals and CCTV cameras through IP. That opened the door for some other type of devices too that we started installing over the next couple of years, be DMS signs, you know, Bluetooth readers were becoming very widespread in 2013, and also it allowed us to upgrade our CCTV cameras to high definition. Towards the tail end of that upgrade project, we implemented a centralized transit signal priority system for 2 of our BRT bus routes. And, you know, that enabled communication between the transit agency and our signal system so that we could provide that extended green for buses that were arriving at the tail end of green at traffic signals along 2 major corridors in the city. At that point, you know, I'd like to say things were humming along. We're making progress. We're doing the best that we can, but we really were restricted resources that we had. Those of you that work in the public sector know it's not exactly easy to increase staff significantly. So in 2016, we made the decision to go out for an RFP to have a consulting firm manage and operate our MMC, and Kimley Horn won that award. And beginning in 2016, they began staffing the TMC at that time for us. Next slide, Lance. So we had we've been using kits. We had incorporated our next phase software into it. But there were just a lot of things that we couldn't do with the next phase software, which at that point, was, 15, 17 years old. So 2017, we put out a RFP to upgrade our signal firmware. And at the tail end of that year, we went ahead and selected D4 and began incorporating that into kits and making some minor modifications with them. 2018, we're on the move. We relocated the TMC to a larger facility with all of the growth within our division. We had outlived our old facility by probably a decade. So we moved into a larger facility, both with our signal engineers and our signal technicians. And in the process, we rebranded our TMC to the MMC, Mobility Management Center. We continue to make modifications to our new space, and we, installed a new video wall consisting of 22 large 65-inch monitors. Strangely enough, that was a downgrade from our 80-inch monitors, but previous to that, we only had 4, so we certainly increased our real estate. And one big milestone we reached at the end of 2019, the 31st of December actually, was getting communication to our final signal. So before that, we're probably in the 95% range, but we're able to get the last traffic signal online in 2019. Next slide. And then 2020 hit. I mean, we all know about 2020, but prior to COVID, we had started an arterial coordinator program, and I think Lance will be able to touch base on that a little bit. But essentially, I don't want to say it was modeled under RTOP because it was much smaller than that, but it was really identifying 3 test corridors for us to, I say pay more attention to. And then that was in January, February, and then COVID hit, and we moved to remote operations. And late last year, Lance and some others started staffing the MMC again. So, we're slowly getting back to normal. This year we have some additional upgrades in the works, improving our video management system, video wall controller, and overall improving our situational awareness. And then in addition to that, we are revamping our communication network again to be more mesh-like, to distribute some of the high-def videos that we get from our 600 plus cameras. That's a summary of the MMC, where we've been, where we are. I mean, I have a tendency of looking at things always evolving. We were a traffic management center, then we decided, there may be a better name for that, which became transportation related, simply because we did more than just monitor the vehicles in the roadway, and then ultimately we settled on mobility management center. And likewise, you're always, the way I look at it is, you're always looking at improving. I mean, there was once upon a time where the only way to make adjustments to intersections in the field was to drive out there, and then slowly but surely, we improved communication from copper to fiber optic. And now it seems like there's nothing we can't do, but I'm sure as time progresses, we will continue to make incremental improvements. Next slide, Lance. So, we have our normal day-to-day, operations, but, we also have special events, and we have our fair share of them within the city. We have numerous smaller events that go on pre-COVID, I mean, on a weekly basis throughout, almost the entire year. Really, the only time that special events take a break is, during the hottest parts of the summer. But I mean, South by Southwest, just engulfs downtown for 2 weeks in March. We have ACL, which is multiple weekends in the fall, and then there's UT football games. And I guess 3 weeks time we'll have our first Austin FC home game. So we are all very excited about that. And then we have also been having a Formula One race in Austin for the last 7 years, I believe. And this year we actually had our first NASCAR race. So we staff the MMC for all of those events, whether it be on the weekend or late night. Next slide. Phbs. I think this is one of our more successful programs as far as the public goes. Before 2000, everybody recognized the need for, higher level control than just, crosswalks. There's obviously a progression from crosswalks to signage. And most of our busier crosswalks, we would have side-mounted or overhead flashing beacons, which operated either 24/7, or some of them would be push button actuated. But overall, I think we're all in agreement that yellow flashing light doesn't have a very high compliance rate, at least in Austin, Texas. 2000 and 2005, we played with the new systems that came on the market. In the picture on the left, you can see next to the crosswalk in pavement flashers. And really, the only thing that those ended up doing for us was increasing maintenance. Our experience where they didn't have any higher compliance rates, and they were just a nuisance to maintain and to keep working. Thankfully, the folks in Tucson had come up with the concept of the Phb. In 2009, we converted our first overhead flasher to a Phb, and we haven't stopped since. The initial Phbs that we installed, the vast majority of them were retrofits. And because of their popularity, because of limited resources, we've really limited them to to roadways with at least 3 lanes. Next slide. So the MUTCD, I mean, you can read the definition of what a Phb is, but they provide very little guidance as far as how they should be used. Next slide, Lance. Really, what you see in front of you is almost the extent of what they require to put in a Phb. And you can see the magic number there at higher volumes is 20 peds an hour. Next slide. So one of the things that became very apparent to us is most of the locations we studied did not have 20 pedestrian crossings per hour. And internally, we're asking ourselves, why were there so few crossings? And the answers were not enough gaps. I mean, realistically, if there aren't gaps for people to cross traffic, then people are going to find another way of getting across the street. So as part of that, we really did some brainstorming, and I mean, we just decided that we like this traffic control. The public likes it. And so we just decided to use engineering judgment when we measured gaps, and there were fewer than 20. I mean, if there were less than 20 gaps in an hour, how could we expect there to be more pedestrians than that? So really, we've looked at adjacent land use, the presence of bus stops, and future developments when we go ahead and put together our Phb studies. And we've been very liberal with our with our decisions as to whether or not to install a Phb. Next slide. And yeah, so to summarize, we realized that Phbs are more than just about meeting the numbers. It's really a means of helping pedestrians to cross the street in a safe manner. Other than expending funds, in a manner that others may decide you had a better use for. I mean, if we put in a Phb that turns out does not have latent demand as we think it would, then it really doesn't restrict the movement of vehicles along the roadway. Yet it does provide a safer way for those few peds that use it to cross the street. Since 2009, we have installed about 90 Phbs. And as you can see, based on the blue graph, a lot of that comes into cycles, which really corresponds to when we've had bond elections or when we've received grant funding. And as it stands right now, we don't see any end in sight as far as the installation of Phbs. I was planning on touching upon it, a bit later, but I mean, as part of a recent bond that was passed, we have funding for another, I think it's 47 Phbs, and that's in addition to another grant that we have for another 10. So, certainly envision over the next 4 or 5 years of, reaching the 140, 150 Phb mark throughout the city. Next. Recently, we've actually procured 3 solar-powered Phb systems. We've installed the first of those at a location that we do have grant money to install a permanent Phb, but just based on the grant process, it was going to be another 2 years before construction would start. So we thought that this would be a good opportunity to get one installed prior to that. And we have similar plans for the other 2. Next slide. And there you go, Lance, your turn.
Yeah. Yeah, so similar to how the city is pushing forward, Phbs and using them in kind of a progressive way to try to serve the citizens of Austin. We want to be progressive in how we manage our arterials as well, and push the envelope. Come from a community there with y'all where you're doing that day in, day out. And our system currently has a little bit of limitations to apply, like the UDOT ATSPM for automated signal performance measures. So we don't typically have lane by lane detection for most of our system with the legacy detection that we have. All of that was implemented well before any of this was a consideration. And so we have bought into INRIX's signal analytics program as one of the earlier adopters to use their probe-based signal analytics. Still relatively new, but we're seeing some value from being able to get signal performance measures in the vein of arrivals on green, split failure, vehicle counts, and from devices within vehicles rather than from our detection itself. So it's uncoupled from our detection system, and we're finding ways to be able to use it and apply it and see SPMs in a way that we would be unable to without it. Recently did a study on Riverside Drive where we were able to show that even though we took lanes away to implement transit priority lanes through some signal timing adjustments and things, we were able to keep traffic performing in basically a similar manner than before. And that's without having to reconfigure all the detection to get all of these statistics. We're also tracking, sorry, my headset is beeping in my ear that it is dying. If that is the case, I will try to switch over to microphone from my laptop. Hopefully that does not occur, but I'm sorry I was distracted there for a moment. If that does, forgive me. Throughout the pandemic, we were using Power BI, which you just saw me showing with the Riverside Drive comparison. We were using Power BI to track changes in volume, travel times, and all sorts of things for COVID. So I'm briefly going to see if I can do a live demonstration of one of those dashboards. So here you can see that we've pulled in lots and lots and lots of data, more than you'd ever want to chew on in Excel. And we're pulling in, this is INRIX travel time. And we can pull it in for all of our different corridors across the city and get average comparisons to the green baseline of February 2020 pre-COVID, and the blue line, which is a couple of weeks ago. And I can look at specific corridors if I want and compare them and see our AM peaks or PM peaks starting to come back. And actually, I got tired of clicking through all those, so found a quick way to just cycle through all of them. So we're able to check this easily each week, and also report back to other parts of the department that control right-of-way permitting, construction, coordination, stuff like that, because we opened up the time that you could be in the roadway for construction during COVID because we saw that volumes decreased by roughly half at its low point. Here you see volume week by week. These are taken from our GridSmart sensors across the city. So we grab about 40 gigs of data each week when we run this, and it populates in this report, and we can look at weekday versus weekend, AM peak, all those sorts of things, and can see that we're roughly within 10% of pre-COVID levels. But if you look at just the PM peak, it's actually 9% right now as well, but AM is more like 25. So it's still down significantly. And if we look at that by hour instead of weekly bins over the year, you can see that AM peak just isn't what it was. So this helps us do a lot of things, helps us inform other departments that work with right-of-way permits, all that sort of stuff that I mentioned. Also helps us within the Arterial Management Division in the MMC to adjust signal timing and get a better sense of where traffic is picking up, where it's still not back, more than just with our naked eye. And we're able to do this quickly using this. When COVID hit and we dropped and had that huge drop off in volume in March and April of last year, we quickly used kits to run alternative timing plans to about 85% of our signals. It's about 850. We've got 1,000, so it makes percentages nice and easy. And so if you take the 10% out that are Phbs, it's probably even more than that. So we were really aggressive in changing the timing plans to better accommodate lower volumes in traffic, so that we could decrease pedestrian delay by lowering cycle lengths and just better fit our timing patterns to the actual volumes that we were seeing out there. And since then, we're now about 30% of our signals are still running override plans, I guess you could say, during the AM peak period. While most of the city, pretty much all but downtown, is back to running its normal PM peak period because it's a little bit better fitting at this point. So Power BI has been a powerful tool for us to track COVID and do other things as well. So let me jump back into the presentation here and keep rolling. In February, we were hit with a pretty dastardly snowstorm. I was there in Atlanta in 2014, I believe it was, for Snowpocalypse. Take that and extend that for a whole week, and that's what we were dealing with. Nobody was really ready or prepared. We were as prepared as we were for any sort of event, but you know, Friday the 12th of February was our last day above freezing until Friday the next week. We had 7 inches of snow, which broke all kinds of records here in Austin. Had a low of 0. It was just bitterly cold. Power outages, water outages all across the city. People were asking us what's happening with the signal system. We're like, well, if it has power, it might be running. If not, it's not. It's going to be dark because no battery backup system will last that long. So it was really Thursday that things started kind of turning back on. Friday, really in earnest. And we used Power BI to track a lot of that. So we linked it up with some of the data that we were getting from kits, and we could have a dashboard that updated every hour during work days, so that management could see how many were currently in flash, how many dark signals did we have, how many total were there in flash, how many have we restored. It was great for us as managers in the MMC to be able to have something like this to quickly stand up and share, so that we wouldn't have to spend as much time answering questions and catching people up to speed. We could be tactical, focus on resolving issues, getting technicians to the field. We even used it as a mapping tool to understand where our outages were, how can we dispatch and organize our dispatching system better in terms of triage and all that sort of stuff, and report back how we were doing. So you can see on the 19th, we brought 121 signals out of flash that day, and overall we were able to reset 34 remotely. So one of the things that, and well, I guess before I talk about that, one of the things that we are very proud of is that power really just started coming on around the 18th and 19th, and within 2 days we had everything back up and running, long before many people had power back, long before water was back, all those sorts of things. We wanted to make sure you needed to be out and about, road conditions were good, we were making things work for you. So we're real proud of that. We threw all of our people at it, and honestly, after a week of being stuck and just trying to survive in the cold, everyone was really great to work with, from the signal technicians, signal engineers. People were stepping up and feeling like we could finally contribute in a helpful way. So it was a really great story. It was a long week. It was a long few days to make that happen. But yeah, we've been through it. 2021 is keeping on rolling. So yeah, remotely resetting MMUs, not really done many places else, I understand. We started using IP accessible MMUs in 2016, rolling those out as a part of our preventative maintenance. And through that procurement, our MMUs automatically check overnight to see if they can reset themselves from different faults. So a red fail or a watchdog fault, like I lost the controller, which often happen after power outages, and they just don't come out how they're supposed to and start running normal operation as they should. You send a tech and they just push the button and you're like, well, that was kind of a waste of time. Nothing was really broken. Nothing was really wrong. Why do we have to send somebody to do that? Well, we have the ability now to attempt to reset them remotely under those certain conditions where it's safe to do so. And we're able to catch 5 to 10% of all of those and reset them remotely. And so adding up the delay savings from the time spent being in basically 4-way stop operation and the savings from having to dispatch a technician, just a small part of 2020 when we started measuring that, got about 30 grand in benefit, and that was only over 3 or 4 months. And we weren't fully utilizing it across the whole system yet. So been something really good success story for us, something that we are looking to do more and more and have had a lot of success with. You can, as you could see from the storm, we were able to reset 34 remotely. So that every little bit helps, especially in situations like that. Brian, I'll let you talk about upcoming projects.
Yes, so you know, I tell people that ever since we had gotten some stimulus funds back in 2009, it's been nonstop, and we're waiting for things to slow down so we can take a breather. And given what we have ongoing right now and what's in the foreseeable future, that's not going to happen. So in 2016, we had a mobility bond election, and I think that was a $720 million bond. And as part of that project, you know, there are 9 corridors that are going to be rebuilt to varying degrees, and you know, many improvements on those corridors, including shared use paths for cyclists. We do plan on rebuilding 145 signals that are of various ages, from 10 years to 45 years old, 50 years old. And then we also have plans on installing new fiber, CCTVs, and upgrading detection along those corridors. Next slide. And so that's a project that's ongoing right now, and another project that we are just about to get started on is a smart priority project, which will improve the centralized transit signal priority system that we have right now, and completely, I'll say, rebuild, reimagine our emergency vehicle preemption system. Currently, we have about 100 intersections that have the, I say the old-fashioned optical, transmitter on fire trucks and emergency vehicles, and then receivers at intersections. Ever since we've installed those in the 90s, we've always had maintenance issues with them. So when we rolled out our TSP system back in 2014, the proverbial light bulb went off in terms of, why can't we do this with fire trucks also? And through various conversations with them and just digging down, I mean, they all have AVL systems, on them, in which they're already tracking their vehicles. So, we're working with them on a centralized system where we'll be getting their location data second by second, so that we can go ahead and preempt signals, through our own servers, communicating with the traffic signals through our own fiber optic cable. So we won't need any type of hardware in the field to do that, and we see no reason that this won't be a citywide program. Next slide. And then, of course, the biggest one of all, last year we had a rail election that finally passed. We've had numerous ones in the previously that have failed, but this is a $7 billion bond for multiple rail lines, new BRT routes, and this is just going to be one of those things that will keep many people active on the project for most of their career at the city. Because if it's like other rail projects throughout the country, by the time we're done with this one, I have little doubt that there'll be subsequent elections to expand it. But those are some of the projects that are coming up, and that will be keeping us busy.
That's all we have. So I think Meredith, if there's some others maybe tracking questions.
Yeah,
we're
so
happy
far
to receive those.
we do not have any directly in the chat. Feel free to submit those if you do have some questions. And you can always contact Brian or Lance after the fact. They do have their contact information posted here for you if you want to have some direct questions. It actually looks like Sung Park just popped in a question. Does Austin experience any issues with the supply of Phbs or other flashing beacons? To my understanding, Metro Atlanta has 6+ months of a lag to get them delivered.
Brian, I think you muted yourself instead of unmuting yourself.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, no problem.
We haven't noticed any lag in the equipment related to Phbs. We do have ongoing contracts with manufacturers for Phb signal heads, which we do keep in stock in our own warehouse. So whenever we build something, we are routinely taking it out of our own inventory instead of waiting for a delivery from a vendor. So in that regards, any order we get from a vendor, we're essentially, repaying ourselves.
Yeah, the city constructs a lot of them themselves. And one of the things to highlight about the temporary Phb solution we were looking at, those go up on luminaire poles, I think, right, Brian?
Yeah, the one
or
that
timber
we installed,
poles or
yeah, the one we installed is just span wire connected between streetlight poles.
Yeah.
All right. An additional question came through from Sam Harris. Can you expand on how crash data was used for the Phbs?
Yes, it's one of those things where trends in pedestrian crashes aren't very evident. Thankfully, unlike vehicle crashes, there are very few pedestrian crashes. So, there typically aren't any trends at the location we put Phbs at. Is the short way of putting it. I mean, we certainly have put them at locations where we've had a fatality, but unlike vehicles, there generally isn't a telltale sign that that there are ongoing crashes at this location. Most of the time, it's more of an observation where it's difficult for pedestrians to cross the street.
in the city, we have a Vision Zero group that actually helps look at a lot of these things. It's not just us doing crash studies. We have access to the crash data. Some of the things, reports that we're pulling in for that Arterial coordinator program in Power BI has crash data next to detection data, next to signal performance data. So, we're looking at that, but they're also coming to us and saying, hey, we're seeing this. Can we implement different solutions? And some of those are pedestrian crash locations and our high injury network corridors. So we've got some help doing that as well.
Awesome. Are there any more questions that folks want to submit in the chat? If
Lance, I have a quick question about the remote resets. You said 5 to 10%. Is that of all flashes that are applicable for the remote reset, or is that the success rate of the remote reset attempts that y'all have?
That's like 5 to 10% out of all flashes. So sometimes I'd have to pull numbers for out of like applicable reset things. I just pulled how many were we able to successfully remotely reset out of how many we had.
So pretty good success rate though for the ones that you are able to attempt to reset remotely.
Yeah. Yeah, and most of the time it's after storms and stuff where we have power issues, things go up and down. There's a red fail on a phase or something briefly because it didn't come out of flash right or come out of dark properly. And so those are the ones that we see the most often. Those really are pretty much the only ones that we're able to reset. We're not resetting conflicts or things. Usually, sometimes those come down to field conditions and stuff. So we've been real happy with it. You know, it's not quite even as good as a batting average, but every little bit counts. Brian, you probably want to weigh in some.
Yeah, no, as Lance mentioned, when our contract for new monitors, was time to renew back in 2016, it was one of those things where it just clicked, where when I'd go in the field, after a storm, it was, half the time it was a simple, reset. And so as a result of that, we had reached out to EDI to talk about the different options that were available as far as reducing that number. And at first they were a little apprehensive about doing it, but after discussing it with them and making sure they realized we didn't want the ability to reset conflicts or anything in that nature, they had gone ahead and they built an Austin firmware that is installed on all of our monitors.
And we're moving to an ATC specification that hopefully is going to help us clear some of those without even having to reset the remote. It's going to wait longer to turn, engage the MMU and stuff like that. So we're actively trying to get rid of those calls that Brian was talking about, where you just go and you just push the button. All right, back to business. I had to drive out here just to do that. So.
Nice.
All righty. Well, seeing as we are at our hour and I haven't seen any more questions come through the chat, we will go ahead and wrap up. So thank you both, Lance and Brian, very much. And thank you 360NS for being our sponsor for this month. We really appreciate that. Sponsors are what help us have each of these meetings, and we really value that amongst our folks. So thank you, everyone, and I hope you have a great day.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, y'all. Yes, we are done.